Hello, guys. Welcome to this new edition of Mind Podcast. This is Aadit Kapadia, and together with me, our old friend, our Mind Podcast returning champion, and a fellow man in yellows, Rohit Pathania. And I guarantee you, we are not going to talk about Australia. This we didn't plan. He actually SIU. So, hi,
Yeah,
Rohit. Welcome to Mind Podcast.
my pleasure, Adit. Always a pleasure talking to you and
Thank you for coming in. I know it's going to be a very interesting discussion this time, as always is. But we're going to talk about. We're going to come back. We're not going to. It's not going to be one topic. It's going to be what Mind Podcast. You listeners, you viewers, always tell me that have one three topical discussion like what Mind Podcast started out as, and is like on most weeks. But then sometimes we also have to do certain interviews and stuff. So then we go to one topic. So this is going to be a multi-layered podcast where we're going to talk about the multiple issues. Going to talk about a little bit about the strategic angle of what is happening in Manipur. We're going to talk about the I.N.D.I.A Alliance, and I say I.N.D.I.A because of the obvious reasons, because that's how they put four dots beneath their five names, and they're coming to Manipur, and what is their contradictions. We're going to talk about a little bit about their impact and what is happening in the hilly states of India as well, because some fascinating new scenarios are emerging. And lastly, we're going to the last 10 minutes we're going to keep a little bit of a cultural discussion where we'll talk about the movie Oppenheimer, but also about cinema and what is going on. So it's going to be a power packed discussion for the next 40-50 minutes. So thank you all for joining. Abhi se thank you bol raha hu. But and please write to us if you want other topics to be covered. Maybe we'll do a part 2 of this podcast. But without further ado, welcome to Mind Podcast, Rohit. And can you tell a little bit about what is happening in Manipur? So now I don't want to, I mean, obviously that video was shocking, reprehensible. And the fact is, I mean, there is nothing to be discussed about that except the perpetrator should be put to justice and the chief minister should be more proactive. I mean, you have the minister of state's house being burned down. What is the chief minister has to take a few steps and a very strong steps. The prime minister also spoke about it before the parliament session started, and there are there is nothing except condemnation and hoping for swift justice and hoping that nothing like this ever happens again anywhere in India. I mean, this is so bad. So what do you think make about what has happened since the revelations, and then the strategic impact and the strategic discussion, because that seems to be forgotten, that Manipur is a border state.
yeah. No, that's a very good question to ask. Adit, and if you look very carefully at what has happened subsequent to the surfacing of the video, the police has definitely cracked down. It has been searching for the culprits. Though the ironic part is that the culprit's house also, as was reported in the news, got burned down very recently.
Wow. Mm,
And
mm,
this was just after the police has had visited the one of the perpetrators' house. See, the problem with Manipur is that there are three fundamental angles to it that are just not getting the kind of attention they deserve.
mm,
One is, of course, the fact that Manipur literally is a fourth angle to the golden triangle of Southeast Asia
mm,
in
mm,
today's
mm,
parlance. And for those who don't know about the golden triangle is actually Laos, Thailand, and Myanmar,
mm,
basically where opium is cultivated and
mm,
is exported around the world. So this
mm,
is the hotbed of opium cultivation, and
mm,
and Manipur has unfortunately become a point where opium and other hard drugs, in fact, get smuggled into the northeast of India. For
mm,
those of our viewers who have not necessarily followed the news over the years,
mm.
Northeast India's drug addiction and substance abuse rate is actually far higher than most of India. In fact,
Wow.
the situation is so bad that some of the highest number of cases as a percentage of HIV/AIDS also actually occur in Manipur.
I did
That
not
is
know
the
that.
level of devastation that has happened in the state.
Mm,
And the genesis of this whole series of events that has happened took place sometime last year when
mm,
a concerted campaign to crack down on opium cultivation inside Manipur and drug smuggling and
mm.
illegal immigration, which was basically becoming the funnel route, was
Correct.
being cracked down upon by the state government as a concerted campaign.
Mm.
So it's not
And
surprising. Yeah, please.
sorry, no, finish your
Yeah,
point.
so
Yeah.
it's not surprising that we're seeing the kind of repercussions that are taking place. There are elements that are actually using tribal rivalries in the region. And
Mm,
please, I think a lot of people tend to sort of also, conflate the issue. It's not necessarily a Hindu versus Christian issue here. Please bear in mind, however hard certain elements are trying to portray it as a Hindu Christian issue or a atrocities on Christian issue, it is not. It is effectively a tribal issue right now. One tribe standing versus against the other tribe. The trust has been broken quite badly between the two. There was, and I mean, it will take a lot of effort to basically restore the even a modicum of trust between the two tribes somehow again. And you also
Hmm.
have to remember one thing: if it was a religious issue, the Nagas would have been involved in the whole process, and the Naga tribe has not even stepped out to get into this fight at all in the
Hmm.
entire Jammu that has happened. Kudos to the guys there. They've been sensible about it, and really, I mean, that tells you that this is not a religious issue.
Yeah, it isn't. It isn't. But what I want to speak about here is what you said about the drug problem is very significant, because that could be one of the reasons why the center is also reluctant on clamping down in a certain way. The one part about Manipur is the natural geography of the state provides a safe haven for a lot of these people, because there are hills and the valleys, and it is divided. You have the outer Manipur voting differently, geographically, demographically very different, and the inner Manipur geographically, demographic. So that divisions, like any state in India, happen. But of course, they get magnified because of the economic blockade, because of the years of unrest, civil unrest. But then you have these drug problems. Then you also have the issues with Myanmar, China. Let's not forget the leadership in Myanmar has also changed in the last few
Yes,
years, right?
yes,
So what role does that play? We don't one doesn't one wonders. And then there's also the Bangladesh angle.
definitely. And most people tend to forget that nearly all the insurgent groups of the Northeast have been tacitly supported by China via the
Hmm.
Myanmar route, and
Hmm.
also in the past by Bangladeshi interests.
Hmm.
So we need, in fact, a lot of your alpha terrorists after peace, after many security accords and peace accords and developmental trade treaties were signed with Bangladesh. Huge
Hmm.
number of alpha cadre that was
Hmm.
hiding in Assam, in Bangladesh. Alpha was the leading
Hmm.
insurgent group of Assam, including people like Paresh
That's right.
Barua, were basically
Hmm.
apprehended from Bangladesh.
Hmm.
So, I mean, the region has, and because of the natural geographies, literally diffusing the boundaries.
Correct.
Even the fencing part has taken a lot of effort, and it's still undergoing in that region. It is literally physically impossible to an extent to fence this area. This geography
Hmm.
is such.
Hmm.
Of course, I mean, the kind of security apparatus that we needed has significantly stepped its game up in the last few years. There's no
Hmm.
doubt about it.
Hmm.
However, there are these gaps that need to be filled, and even the government has been acknowledging it on public statements. I mean, you look at the
Hmm.
kind of reply they've given in the parliament in the past, or the fact that they've identified the issue of illegal immigration in nearly all states of the Northeast.
Hmm.
And it is a very sensitive issue for the region as a whole. See, one of the
Absolutely.
things that was going on amongst the demands from the larger Manipur state residency, the people
Hmm.
was, let's bring an NRC that is similar to what the Assam state government had rolled out on the orders of the High Court back in the day.
That's right. That's right.
And the idea was that we do not want a lot of illegal immigration, particularly happening from Myanmar, which has a very strange connection with respect to some of the tribal communities by blood, by relation, by marriage, by kinship, by culture.
Hmm.
Basically, as a result, leading to people moving too freely between the region,
Hmm.
and as a result, also becoming the conduit for drugs, for arms of the most modern kind that you can imagine. In fact,
Correct.
to create
That's right.
havoc. So these the ST status issue is actually a very small issue when you see the larger picture
Hmm.
at the end of
Hmm.
the day.
Hmm.
And the ST issue has been going on for the last 5 decades in the state at least.
Correct.
So it's not I mean, the ST issue was the least of the problems really that triggered the situation that has come up. So
Hmm.
let's be practical about what we have. When the facts stack up, it's really an issue of security, that too,
Hmm.
border security, and crackdown on illegal immigration and the drug mafia. That
Correct.
really needs to be taken up, and the government security forces are at it. We know
Hmm.
that for sure. They are trying everything that they can, but I think it will have to go eventually beyond just the security. There are other things that will also have to step in. For instance, the kind of peace and reconciliation effort that would be needed subsequently. We
Hmm.
really need to prepare for that, because
Absolutely.
wounds have surfaced on both sides.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, I'm not trying to condone this, but there are a lot of reports of similar incidents happening on all sides.
Well, the issue is also you have to look at it threefold, right? One, you have to look at it from the India story. The India story is that, strategic impact cannot be discounted. You cannot look at just the political outfall of it, because if you manage, there are assets that the intelligence has amongst all tribes and all communities, right?
Exactly.
So how will
Exactly.
that be impacted, right? And that would explain the strategic statements made by the government on many of these issues. The
Yes.
second thing is the political leadership of the state, right? Does
Mm.
the government trust Mr. Biren Singh to continue? Do they not? What are the issues? They have to, clarify on that. And the third and the most important part is the China angle. You
Yeah.
cannot just completely and I say that separately from the strategic angle, is because, you cannot just, basically assume that nothing can be done, or this is not being looked at by the other
Mhm.
countries
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
a opportune time to, because
Yeah.
एक बार once there is a perception, injustice से भी कई ज्यादा dangerous है injustice plus perception of more injustice, right?
Yes.
You can solve injustice, but when there is also that perception, when even when you try to address it and that this is not solved, many external players can take advantage of that, and you don't want that to happen.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. And I mean, in general, the government, and this is not just restricted to Manipur, Adit, the
Mhm.
government in the last 2 or 3 years, if anybody has been generally following the security news, has been taking a major crackdown, undertaking a major crackdown on drug smuggling, on the drug mafia in the country. The kind
That's
of
correct.
seizures that we've been seeing has increased by at least 250% year on
Mhm.
year.
Correct.
So
So
intelligence has been working very well on the ground, and of course there is more coordination also happening with friendly countries. Second,
absolutely.
there is a very strong pincer-like movement taking place on the drug mafia in all border states of India. Mind
Hmm.
you, it's not just Manipur. You look at what's happening in Punjab, you look at what's happening in Jammu and Kashmir. These are very sensitive states as well. Drug addiction problems have been well known in the two states now for more than a
Hmm.
decade, and there is serious action being taken by the central agencies, and the state agencies are also helping them now.
On a lighter note, Rohit is very happy that we're talking about a drug problem and that state is not Punjab, because Rohit हमेशा बोलता है कि जब देखो माइंड पॉडकास्ट पे कुछ ना कुछ तो पंजाब की बात आ ही जाती है. But you're right. Coming in all seriousness, that is a reality. And then you have the whole Naga peace accord discussion. How far
Definitely
has it gone? Because Nagaland and Tripura, so even the northeast states are not a monolith. I mean, I cannot emphasize that enough. So
agree.
that's the biggest problem. So that people are not understanding the complexity of issue and stuff like that. So I mean, that's how it is. So now let's talk about the political fallout, political impact of this. So I'm moving on to the members of the I.N.D.I.A Alliance. First of all, the kitne bachte hai, let's see, because they also have Mr. Pawar's party, the Congress, because Pawar's party has split. Will it go one way after the split or the other way after the split? But that is a question that no one has been able to even ask about Mr. Pawar, what way he'll go, since he is his political career. But then you have the JDU, the left and Mamata seem to be fighting in Bengal, but somehow they are, so they are going to plan to go to Manipur and stuff. I don't know if this will work or not. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But ultimately, doesn't this actually help Mr. Modi if by the way, contrary to what others say, their name, as silly as it may say, at least gave them footage for 2 days, and I think that was the only intention. I don't think they cared about the merits behind the name. They just wanted to be in the discussion. So, and that they got free footage. Everybody
Definitely.
was responding to them, and I think Mr. Modi realized that. So suddenly the conversation around that has toned down, because initially there
Hmm.
was a very sharp response, and then smartly enough the strategic mind prevailed, and you're like, "Bhai, rehne do, let them whine whatever they want to." But a Rahul Gandhi versus Mr. Modi, Prime Minister Modi battle will always benefit Mr. Modi, rather than Mr. Gandhi, right?
Yeah.
And do you think that will happen, or are they going towards a 2004-ish approach and hope that somehow BJP can be reduced down in their seats?
No, that's a very good question. I was recently hearing a very veteran journalist speak,
Mm,
on some show, and it was very fascinating when he said, he was recalling the 1971 election, and
mm,
apparently all the parties had also come on one side similarly to, combat Mrs. Indira Gandhi's hegemony. And
mm,
he said the rallies were so raucous, they were like so full of josh. It felt like ab to Indira Gandhi gayi, and the final results were absolutely devastating for the opposition parties overall.
yeah. Huh.
You have to realize a few things. Generally what happens, when
Hmm.
you actually form two poles, it is advantage BJP by
Hmm.
default,
Hmm.
because now there is no chance of vote splitting.
That's right.
Secondly, arithmetic doesn't necessarily mean chemistry. People
Hmm.
tend to forget that.
Hmm.
And what do you mean by chemistry? When you
Hmm.
have two sets of party cadres who have literally fought, tooth and nail against each other for the longest time, and you
Hmm.
ask them all of a sudden to come together and vote together,
Hmm.
you really think that will happen? I mean,
Hmm.
come on. We've seen this experiment so many times in Uttar Pradesh. Even in the worst of situations, when the whole Mile Mulayam Kashi Ram Hawa mein ud gaye Jai Shri Ram Nautanki happened,
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
the difference between that alliance and the BJP was just 2 seats.
Yeah.
Just 2 seats. So, I mean, jitni marzi baat kar lo, it doesn't work out so simply. The only exception to this to date has been Bihar, but for a variety of different reasons.
Hmm.
There, of
So
course, the thing
this
is
is
that
interesting.
yes.
Ha, sorry, go on. Complete your point.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the only reason why I feel that the only reason why Bihar has ever worked out is because the kind of voters that got split from the Congress during the late 80s and the early 90s basically continue to be the same set of people who are voting today for the RJD, for the JDU, for the left, for all these Mahagathbandhan parties of Bihar. So it is essentially one big umbrella that they were forming all over again.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but let me. So, it's interesting that you talk about the 71 elections, because a lot of people forget that after Indira Gandhi, the second biggest party in India was the Communist Party of India, Marxist. The third
Exactly.
biggest party was Communist Party of India, which ultimately supported the emergency, if I'm not mistaken. And
Yes,
then
it did.
the fourth biggest party was the Bharatiya Jansangh, which Mr. Vajpayee was the leader, which actually had 35 seats in 1967. So Jansangh was already the number when under Deen Dayal Upadhyay.
Yeah,
So actually it lost a third of its seats. Then
exactly.
obviously in 1977, they formed the Janata Party with Morarji Desai, and Morarji Desai gets 260, which by the way that has to be the biggest jump in the history of India. When Morarji Desai led from 35 to 295 seats. I don't
Yeah,
think this
exactly.
has ever happened.
Yeah, and an absolute blip actually in the way elections happen in India, if you think about it.
Correct.
So
And Indira still had 154 seats, because
exactly,
the revival of the Congress party has only happened always from the south.
exactly, and this is what Rahul Gandhi's Bharat Jodo Yatra was all about. They realized that they continue to have people sympathetic towards them in the south, which can give them the kind of numbers they need to repeat the 2004 experiment, mind you. The
Exactly.
2004 experiment where they had just 8 seats more than the BJP, or I think it was 6 seats more than the BJP, something of that sort. And
Seven
to
seats.
form a
So
government. Ha, seven.
138 of BJP and 145 of Congress.
So 7 seats more, and they were able to form a government.
Hmm.
And the Congress believes very strongly that it just needs to repeat that, and they will be
Yeah.
able to form a government
No,
somehow
no,
or the other.
and yeah, exactly. So but the thing, the weird thing with the Congress party is that they have to first of all get rid of their ego, right?
Exactly.
I remember something that Mr. KC Tyagi said after the 2019 elections.
Hmm.
um, he said that आपको दिल चाहिए बड़ा ये करने के लिए कि नीतीश कुमार को बीजेपी to accommodate, they given them 17 seats to themselves, 17 to Nitish and 6 to them, and they swept 39 out of 40 seats, right? So Congress has to realize what where they stand. But let's look at the states where the NDA has significant challenges, right? And there are
Hmm.
two major states I feel, Bihar and Maharashtra. And apart from that, of course, Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan, because even the best of the surveys, they are giving that they're predicting that they'll lose 5 seats in MP and Rajasthan.
Yeah.
Of course, right now, it's too early. It's 8 months to go, but they
Mm.
also vote for state elections. So
Yeah.
the alliance takes a very potent swaroop when it comes to Bihar, and but Maharashtra, with the NCP splitting, I don't know which way it'll go. So what do you think with that?
No, that's a good question. And you now let's start with Bihar first. And in Bihar, I think BJP is on the strongest footing ever, thanks to one person named Nitish Kumar, who's
Mhm.
becoming a liability on himself. Forget his alliance partners right now. I mean, it's come to the point where people just don't want to even see his face. And frankly, he has lost total control on the government because he doesn't know what the government is doing at the time.
Mm.
Home
Mm.
Minister.
Mm.
There was an incident when students were lathi charged in Bihar, in
That's right.
Patna.
That's right.
And the
Mm.
next day, when he's asked by the reporters, he just turns around to his OSD and says, "The lathi charge hua hai kya?" It's on record. It's for everybody to see.
Yeah.
I'm not even kidding. That's the state of affairs in Bihar. And the way crime and law and order has just blown up ever since
Mhm.
Nitish came back with Lalu.
Mhm.
There was an investor summit being done in Bihar, in
Mm.
Patna,
Correct.
and just 20 kilometers away from it, two gangs of the sand mining mafia were engaging in a shootout.
Mm.
Just 20 kilometers away. I mean, I can't even tell you how bizarre it sounds.
Yeah, it was absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. And but last time Nitish Kumar and BJP did not win the Bihar elections by a huge margin. It was a very tough sort of loss, win loss situation for them too. So how do they
And the
deal with
reason
that?
precisely was Nitish Kumar.
Hmm.
Had the BJP dared to contest the election alone, and it is only God knows whatever the reasons were
Hmm.
that they continued to stay in alliance with Nitish Kumar,
Hmm.
excuse me, but had they contested the elections on their
Hmm.
own,
Correct.
I can bet my bottom dollar on the fact that the BJP would have gotten the majority it wanted on its own. It did not need Nitish Kumar. Nitish
Wow.
Kumar
Okay.
proved to be a liability on the party more
Hmm.
than as a
A
tactical
loyal
alliance.
liability on the party.
Yeah, exactly. He's a loyal liability. And unfortunately, there are elements inside the BJP who reportedly continue to be loyal to Nitish Kumar.
Yeah,
There
that is
is a rumor
unfortunately
going on,
the
by the way,
truth.
that Nitish wants to join back with the BJP, but the BJP will have none of it now.
That
That
and that
door
is
has been
that
closed
is the
forever.
way to do it, because this would be a completely stupid move if Nitish Kumar is taken in the BJP again,
And it
because
will hurt the BJP very badly because BJP has realized how big a problem Nitish Kumar is for the voters today. So
that's right.
the door has been closed for him. Door has been
Correct.
totally closed. Now,
Hmm.
the second
Hmm.
state that you're talking about is Maharashtra. Based
Hmm.
on whatever we have seen and whatever has been happening, the
Hmm.
one thing that is certain is that the BJP has definitely played its cards right for the short term by allying with Ajit Dada.
Hmm.
It is well known on the ground that the NCP cadre and the NCP supporter on an average has no qualms allying with the BJP. In fact,
Hmm.
that has been the demand for I think now 7 or 8 years.
Hmm.
And everybody knew it at the top level. Now, whether Mr. Pawar is being very strategic by being in both camp and seeing whichever is the winner eventually, because he
I
might not have
personally
got
think that is the thing, because the NCP and that is not is not a natural alliance. It just is not.
No, it's not. That I agree with your assessment from whatever I've read. But the
Yeah.
thing is that I think they've realized probably there's a. So here's my theory. I
Hmm.
think they're seeing that the Lok Sabha will have a certain trend and the Vidhan Sabha will have a different trend,
Correct.
which is why they're hedging their bets by being in both camps right now.
Okay. So that is your perspective on that. Okay.
I may be
I
wrong, but it seems to be the only explanation that is legible right now with the weirdness that is going on. There was a meme that was circulating for a while where somebody is trying to explain what is the position of NCP in Maharashtra. It is
Hmm.
inside the government, it is outside the government. Sharad Pawar is with the government, Sharad Pawar is outside the government. Sharad Pawar is
And
supporting
here
the
is the
government.
also there is the interesting thing about Maharashtra also, right? You went till Mr. Munde and Mr. Mahajan were in charge of
Hmm.
Mr. Maharashtra. They were always more anti Sharad Pawar and more pro Shiv Sena. Uh,
Yes.
Mr. Gadkari has been an advocate of leaning towards Mr. Pawar, and rather than leaning just with Shiv Sena or using Mr. Pawar as a leverage in case, because Shiv Sena always had these insane demands, right? Shiv Sena was this perennially ruthe hue fufaji. Always Bal
Yeah.
Thackeray would come and whine about something, and people would
Exactly.
have to run from Delhi to go, and so there was always that dynamic. Also, in Maharashtra is a very complicated state. It's not a simple state. It essentially
Yeah.
is three states rolled into one.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And the fun part is this. So if you remember when the Nationalist Congress Party was actually formed back in 1998,
Hmm.
right? The whole argument was that we will not accept colonialism. I don't know if you remember this. And at
Yes,
that
of
time,
course.
Mamta Banerjee, who used to be allied with the BJP, said that these are our Lal Bal Pal.
Yes,
है ना? And interestingly, I remember that the NCP was giving issue-based support to the NDA as well, even then.
correct, correct. I agree with you. So
So, I mean, it is an old habit, huh? I mean, my point is this is an old habit of hedging on all bets. You
hmm.
never know which horse, when you're not certain which horse is winning, you put your money on all the horses.
Yeah, absolutely. And ultimately that is what it is. That
Yeah.
is exactly what it is, that they're putting their money on all the horses and hoping that kuch na kuch lag jaye ya kuch na kuch aa jaye. But the fact is after all this, what is the long term situation for the BJP, right? What is the long term situation? And the long term is in Maharashtra. If you have so many candidates, you are bound to lose,
Yeah, that's true. And the
because
problem is that they
ultimately,
will have to
and I
accommodate
don't,
everyone.
just one thing I'll clarify. I don't mean bound to lose the election. You're bound to lose some of your faces because you just don't have that many seats. Ajit
Exactly.
Pawar will ask for 10 to 15 seats. Those 10 to 15 seats, if BJP and NCP were in contest, your cadre is not going to be happy. So how do you manage that?
No, that's an uphill task for the BJP to figure out. In fact, this is the same problem that has happened in a lot of the North Indian states over the last few years. I mean, barring Uttarakhand's assembly elections, ticket distribution, unfortunately, despite the best of efforts to make it transparent, dependent on popularity amongst cadre and a lot of other factors, just didn't work out for the BJP. You look at the way Himachal elections turned out. You're seeing similar stories right now being repeated in places like Jammu, which is the core of BJP in the state, or you
Hmm.
see it in Punjab as well. In Punjab, though it managed to win 2 seats, right now there's a lot of rumor floating around that one of the MLAs who just
Hmm.
got removed from the post of the party president in unit
Hmm.
of the state unit is in contact with Aam Aadmi Party and
Wah.
wants to move over there. Though the thing is that if that person moves out, a lot of the people inside the BJP would say good riddance, because they feel that he has been equally responsible among other people for not
Hmm.
letting the BJP grow for the longest time in the state.
सो अभी पंजाब में तो देखते हैं कैसा गदर मचता है, बट
अरे पंजाब see, पंजाब में the BJP has an even weirder problem. It doesn't have enough people to contest the election.
वही ना,
with
हाँ, और
with the
गुरदासपुर के एमपी भी रिपीट किए जाएंगे या नहीं, आई डोंट नो. सो
Oh, that is going to be a very tough one. I am placing
Vinod,
my bet
I
in
feel
Sunil
bad for
Jha.
the legacy of Vinod Khanna, because the reason why Mr. Sunny Deol
अब
won
विनोद
was
खन्ना,
because
I agree
no, no,
आदित भाई, बट
because Vinod
विनोद खन्ना लेगेसी का भी टाइम हो गया, मतलब
नहीं
बहुत
नहीं नहीं
साल हो
नहीं,
गए.
no, I don't mean that way. I'm saying he had at least cultivated that seat. मतलब वो
Yeah,
he was
agree,
visible in
agree.
the seat. That's what I'm
And
saying. I don't think Mr.
he
Deol
was
is
a
that
very
visible in
popular.
this seat.
He used to spend at least half a year there, यार.
Yeah, exactly. That's what
At
I'm
least half
saying.
a year he
So
used to live in गुरदासपुर. कौन सा एमपी उसके बाद आज तक रहा है वहां पे?
हाँ, so
एमपी
unfortunately I
छोड़े,
don't.
एमएलए तक भी गुरदासपुर में टाइम स्पेंड करता अपना,
The,
लोकल
the
जो
the
है.
biggest joke, I was talking to someone, I was like, they were saying that we hope that Gadar is shot in Gurdaspur, so Mr. Deol would have at least spent some time there. So at least that was my joke on it.
No, that's
But
true.
I
And
mean,
it's going to be a very big problem. My gut feeling is that the BJP might field Mr. Sunil Jakhar as
hmm.
the face for Gurdaspur, because he's a heavyweight for sure, even though he's come to a party that is relatively lightweight.
Also, I think Sunil Jakhar ke liye, this is a temporary appointment for 3 years, even if he wins, because ultimately the goal is 2026, sorry,
Exactly.
2027 assembly
Yeah, yeah,
elections. And
yeah,
you give him 4 years, you give him three and
yeah.
a half years to absolutely cultivate and build the party. And there is a 40% Punjabi Hindu vote, which is a floating vote, which
Exactly.
BJP gets 8 to 9% of it. You
Yeah.
cannot just overall, no, but I'm sorry, overall they get 8 to 9%. You can go up to 15 to 17% easily.
It's such a fascinating thing that you've hit the number in such a perfect way. The Jalandhar bypolls, BJP did find a very respectable candidate,
Yeah,
though a family man, in the sense, Inder Iqbal Singh Atwal, whose father
correct,
Iqbal Singh Atwal was also a former MP, uh,
correct.
a Dalit face as well. I mean, a Mazhabi Sikh face. Jalandhar is a reserved seat, and the BJP struck 16% vote share. It was higher than the Akalis in that
Exactly.
bypoll. And for the
Yeah,
first time ever, BJP actually got votes in Sikh-dominated villages.
yeah,
So the people are willing to try if they give them a face. It's
yeah,
becoming
yeah.
increasingly clear.
it
And
it will.
the funny part is the Congress and the AAP are apparently coming together in Punjab for an alliance. Is what Hindi newspapers are reporting right now. And if
If
that
well, I
happens,
mean,
both of the
no, I'm
parties are
sure.
going to get decimated.
No, no, that will be a deal that app asks for, because if but the scary part of that alliance shouldn't be in Punjab, in Delhi, because if that happens in Delhi, I don't see BJP winning all 7 seats in Delhi. It just won't happen.
My bet is the
Because,
other way around. In fact, the BJP's margin will increase because the only people who are holding on to Congress are the ones who are patently anti-AAP right now in Delhi.
well, that could be true, but the thing is, I still don't see a 7-0 sweep happening,
Huh.
because
That
there are
is
seats in
genuinely
Delhi.
a problem, and that's a problem across North India per se.
Yeah, exactly.
Unfortunately, barring Uttar Pradesh and some pockets of Rajasthan, I don't see BJP really making a very good scorecard
Correct.
across this region.
So we'll have to see, where there are, and where are they. See, of course, 2019 was a very strange election, because
Yeah,
the BJP vote share in Delhi, I think, was like 55% or some, in
yeah,
excess of
which is an
50%.
absolute rarity.
Which never happens. And if you look at the margins from West Delhi and Northwest Delhi, BJP won with 61% vote, 60 to
Yeah.
61%. In fact,
And
the lowest.
can I say that these are seats that are actually dominated by Jats and Gujars?
Exactly. So that is the issue. And the in fact, the lowest margin was Meenakshi Leghi with 55% vote, which was
Yeah,
still a very good margin in Chandni Chowk. So in Delhi,
exactly,
I think last election was a weird sort of thing, where AAP plus Congress was not even close to BJP. BJP
exactly,
beat AAP plus Congress by about 10-12 percentage points. It was
exactly.
very similar to Gujarat. But again, that's what I'm saying. 6 months or a year later, in
Hmm.
2020
The
Vidhan Sabha
tables turn
election,
around,
AAP
literally.
romps back to power with more than
Exactly.
50% votes. So
Exactly. So it was basically a reversal of roles that took place.
total split verdict. So
Yeah.
if AAP is, doing this, that's what we'll have to see, how they go. But how do you view it as pan India? Ab bataiye, pan India, how do you view as this alliance?
See, Pan India, this alliance has a lot of contradictions, and we already see that surfacing in the when the no confidence motion was attempted.
Hmm,
Right.
hmm, hmm,
I believe the debate is yet to happen around it, and the voting is to take place.
hmm,
But YSR Congress has already opted out of it.
hmm.
Biju Janata Dal has already opted out of it. I think there was
Yeah,
another major state party that also opted out of it. I think it was BRS, I guess, Bharat Rashtra Samiti, which is the former Telangana Rashtra Samiti or something of that sort. So you already have a split happening.
hmm,
So what is this alliance all about? It could not even convince somebody who is an existing ally like the YSRCP to actually come and vote behind one. Secondly,
true.
there are so many contradictions. Congress wants to be the number one party in the alliance. The others don't want it to happen.
Hmm,
Right? How will that? And there is an attempt now within parties as well. From the same state, for instance, the Mahagathbandhan parties are trying very hard, especially
mhm,
to secure a prime space. But
hmm.
Lalu Prasad has ensured, at least in his physical presence, that Nitish Kumar ka patta kat jaye अच्छे से.
कट जाए, एब्सोल्युटली,
Cut it, yeah,
एब्सोल्युटली.
as they say it in
सभी
Hindi.
हाँ, एब्सोल्युटली. अब देखने वाली बात है कि कैसे कर सकते हैं
And
स्टफ.
it is a known fact. If you remember that press conference where he's saying, आपको शादी कर लेना चाहिए, दूल्हा बन जाना चाहिए. It was basically a jibe at becoming the prime minister of the country or becoming the
Yes,
prime ministerial face for the alliance.
absolutely. So
The one good thing that happened was India gave an opportunity for Narendra Modi's old rhetorical style to come back.
Yes. Purana
Rare.
Purana Jalwa Dig Gap, political
Exactly, which is
campaign,
a rare
and that
commodity
is
these
his
days.
strength. That is his strength, which he so moving on, and we are going to the last part of the discussion. You mentioned a little bit of the hilly states, right, in Jammu and stuff.
Yeah.
Is the BJP on a sticky wicket in Jammu?
Oh, the situation for the BJP is actually very bad on the ground. By the way,
Hmm.
urban local body elections are also turning up very quickly in the state. So
Hmm.
you will get to see the BJP really struggling to even make a mark in some of the major towns and cities across the state of Jammu and
Hmm.
Kashmir. And
Hmm.
Ladakh is of course now separate union territory, so it doesn't count. And
That's
the
right.
big reason for that is that BJP's core base, which was Jammu, is feeling very alienated right now for a variety of
Hmm.
reasons under the current LG administration.
Hmm. Hmm.
Now, one can argue that a lot is being done for Jammu, and I mean, there's a lot of merit to the argument as well. But the pace, for instance, of some of the development works that is taking place is really abysmal.
Hmm.
For that matter, people are also very upset with the way some of works related to culture and heritage is taking place right now in the state.
Hmm.
There's this example of the restoration work going on for the Mubarak Mandi Palace complex of Jammu, which has
Hmm.
been the historical seat of the Dogra rule and
That's
is a
right.
symbol of pride. And I mean, the pace is just awful. Just a few days back, there were these videos and photos emerging of absolute like abysmal levels of water logging having occurred in the complex, and there's nobody to even bother about cleaning that up. And this is a site that is actually undergoing restoration right now.
Hmm.
The Jammu High Court is already listening to a petition on the subject, and it went for an inspection earlier this year, around April or May, and it found
Hmm.
that out of some 20 odd buildings, three buildings had actually disappeared permanently. There was
Oh
no sign
God.
of the three buildings anymore. So, I mean, there is a lot that is really becoming a matter of much frustration, especially for the urban voters of JNK, and that too
Hmm.
of the Jammu region, the Jammu division.
Hmm.
So, I mean, the problem, and there's this accusation that the BJP is more interested in Kashmir than in Jammu, where they don't, and Kashmir, mein, they will not even get one vote if they, even if they sold their skins. So, I don't know. I mean, the BJP really needs to try very hard. It will need a Herculean effort to actually win back some of the trust of the people. See,
Hmm.
the
Well,
point is,
let's.
there is this argument given that there is no alternative to BJP in Jammu. Boss,
Hmm.
alternative के लिए कोई wait नहीं करता sometimes.
Hmm.
Let
Hmm.
this be very clear.
Well, let's hope that better sense prevails on this, and then this issue is resolved as fast as
Yeah,
humanly possible. Because
yeah,
other than that, you don't want to lose the support of the people.
exactly.
Which
And
uh,
it is a fact that in Jammu, actually, the BJP can really get a lot of things done very easily if it wants to. And
right,
by the way, after delimitation of the assembly, Jammu will have one extra seat over the Kashmir region.
right. So
So it is
this
critical to have, the popular support with you if you really want to form the government in JNK.
Yeah, and it's
Whenever
a
it
zero
needs to.
sum game. It's a zero
Yeah,
sum game, so to speak. Like you can
exactly.
just get it done. So let's hope better sense prevails on this, and hopefully
I hope
this
so.
what you said about and we'll keep a close track on this, and we'll make sure that we'll discuss this in detail and give it the seriousness it deserves. But
Definitely.
Rohit raised some very
Definitely.
important point. I'm not familiar with the ground situation at Jammu, obviously, so I always rely on people to give me information on this. But moving to the last part of the discussion, and I want to say I watched a film last night, Oppenheimer, and this is not recency bias, guys. I was truly stunned by it, and it was obviously there is the scene about where they talk about the Bhagavad Gita and stuff, and it was unnecessary, could be avoided. But I also think that the way it's being portrayed is something different. Most people who are talking about the scene have not seen the scene, so I was not a fan of the way, but that was Chris Nolan's interpretation. One could agree, disagree with him, and stuff like that. But the crux of the point is the differentiation he puts in within the American political establishment and the scientists. He's shown the European scientists as a counterweight, where they say that if you become an establishment scientist, you're not you're not a scientist anymore. You're just a part of the establishment, and that's the moral quandary he talks about. Of course, the movie will have its persuasions, but it has also a very searing critique of communism, which I thought was very fascinating. Which but he does it with subtle terms, right? Even J. Robert Oppenheimer did have communist sympathies, but how he takes it down, or how he questions the communists about whether they've actually read Das Kapital or not. When he's questioned, they're like, where do you read this? And he said Das Kapital. I'm assuming that should be a definitive source for communism, right? And that's, we joke about that the Marxists in India are more Karl Marx than even Karl Marx himself, right? So that, so
On a
it
side note, this reminds me of a very funny story.
hmm,
If you know Bhagalpur in Bihar,
hmm.
which is actually also supposed to be the great revolutionary Kanhaiya Kumar's hometown,
Yeah,
uh, home
yes.
district, and he lost by 2.5 lakh votes to Giriraj Kishore in the
Hmm.
2019 election.
Giriraj
Now,
Singh.
of course, Giriraj Kishore, Giriraj Singh, basically.
गिरिराज किशोर तो बेचारे आचार्य थे.
Sorry, my bad. Giriraj Singh. So
Yes.
the fun part was that
Hmm.
Bhagalpur used to be considered a huge communist stronghold back in the day, and there was
That's right.
this running joke in the Hindi circles in these days कि जब मॉस्को में बारिश होती है तो भागलपुर में भी छाता खोल के बैठ जाते हैं. So yeah, the communist stranglehold on
Correct.
large parts of
And
the
he also
world.
talks about the Communist Party of countries ultimately devolving some sort of an identity or thing to Russia and India that can be extrapolated to China as well. But
Yeah,
so they actually talk about how they started in the 30s, how they ended up in the 40s and 50s. But what I want to talk about is the unnecessary controversy, or necessary for people, whatever your opinion be, has taken away from one people. A lot of people in India said, they said that, it shows American agreement. I was like, no, it does not. It actually shows the American political establishment in a very bad light, in a way that they were so obsessed in the arms race. And so I think it's a critique of this, it's a searing critique of the president at that time, Mr. Harry Truman, and others. So I think it's a brilliantly made film. It's his most political film
it,
yet.
I would say, in fact, it's very clever, subtle propaganda as well. If you remember what happened subsequently to people like Oppenheimer,
Hmm.
or the fact that Oppenheimer's later part of his life actually coincides with the McCarthy era,
Yeah, he
right?
actually talks about that
McCarthy,
in the
yeah,
film.
and villainizes McCarthy in a
Yes.
very, very strong way. I seen rushes, so I could just make out from that.
Yeah.
Those who
And
remember the McCarthy era, there was a very interesting movie that had come out like a decade or so back. I think it was called Good Night and Good Luck, for those who have seen
hmm,
that Hollywood movie, which was actually
hmm,
a criticism, a real life incident of a news anchor actually having heavily criticized John McCarthy,
correct.
Senator John McCarthy. And he used to end his news show every day, every night with Good Night and Good Luck. And on
Hmm.
his last show, he actually blows up the hell out of McCarthy, tears him apart. Of course, he's also
That's
going
right.
to face the inquiry subsequently, but that is a very interesting movie, shot in black and white, by the way. Amazing cinematography also of the movie.
Hmm,
So the
hmm,
point is that the fun part is, after many decades, a lot of the so-called suspects turned out to be actually Communist Party card holders.
that's correct.
So the paranoia, that, as it was called back then, actually had some basis to it,
Hmm,
interestingly.
hmm.
And
No,
Oppenheimer,
absolutely.
so this movie, the way it's being, the sad part is, in India, people were so disappointed with the movie because इसमें bomb blast का scene नहीं दिखाया, ठीक
Hmm.
है? And that is, I mean, I'm sorry, I mean, it puts the Indian audiences in very poor light.
How about
But
it is silly, yaar. Yeah.
yeah, but you think about it, this subtle propaganda against McCarthyism in the movie is so visible. And that was the fascinating part of, you know, artists of that generation, particularly, the
Hmm,
way they were able, who were many of them who had leftist leanings, even in
hmm,
America, and the
hmm.
way they were able to put negative light on America. In fact, as part of our reading list recommendations that we generally get to do, I will even recommend this book if you can get your hands on it. This
Yeah,
is a book by the famous playwright Arthur Miller called
correct.
Focus. This
Hmm,
book is actually about anti-Semitism in the pre-Second World War America.
hmm.
How people were getting inspired by Germany on the streets of America and started targeting Jews. And this is a
That's right.
dark chapter that nobody wants to talk about, but Arthur Miller himself, being a Jew, wanted to do this.
Yeah,
Though the
yeah.
main character of the book is not a Jew, he just starts looking like a Jew because of his glasses. That's the premise of the book.
Absolutely. No, and it is a very
Having
important
said
book.
that,
It's a hmm,
the way,
hmm,
yeah, agree. And it's just fascinating when you realize how cinema is a tool of propaganda. In India, we've had propaganda done by cinema by the Dravidian movement for the longest time. And
That's
people
right.
have even forgotten how it's done. If you read a book by R. Kannan, a biography, an authoritative biography by R. Kannan on Annadurai, C.N. Annadurai,
Hmm.
the first
Hmm.
Dravidian chief minister of Tamil Nadu,
Hmm.
and he was a film script, he was actually a film writer, a movie script
That's right.
writer. And he used
Correct.
to write scenes. There were scenes in movies where they say that, you should not take dowry. Who told you that? Anna did. Is the dialogue literally. And the movie all of a sudden just zooms into a portrait of C.N. Annadurai in the background, in the
Huh.
backdrop, to suggest that this is the Anna that we are talking about.
Hmm.
Or they would show historical characters carrying black and red flags, which are the colors of the Dravidian movement
Hmm.
in the day. And
Hmm.
color scenes, mein, it's just, I mean, people don't realize how strong cinema can be a tool of propaganda. That is
Right.
exactly what all leftists across the world have focused on. You look
Right.
at the amount of money that the former Soviet Union used to invest in. If you've
Hmm.
ever seen Moscow film archives, which are available for anybody to watch on YouTube, by the way,
Hmm. Hmm.
fascinating stuff. The way they
So,
show
I
the
mean,
communist utopia.
so I would absolutely recommend, and actually, the recent film show Jubilee that talks
Mhm.
about it also discusses this in quite in detail about it, and it's a very fascinating show on it. But you're right. You're right. It's such an important discussion that our folks refuse to have. We must have. So I think in that उसी तर्ज पे अगर मैं बोलूं recommendation by recommendation obviously this week is go and watch Oppenheimer and make up your mind
Definitely,
on what
definitely.
you think. But I think Chris Nolan is probably the finest filmmaker in our generation. In the top 5 I would rate him. I like Tarantino, but the subtlety with which he's shown this and the juxtaposition, the one scene, two scenes stayed with me. One was the Harry Truman scene where the my one of my favorite test actors ever, Gary Oldman, plays Truman. I couldn't even tell in the film he was that brilliant. And one scene where Oppenheimer tells the world or tells the people he worked with about the blast, and the juxtaposition where he thinks of all the victims in Japan that were killed along because of it, right? And he's announcing it. So people, I mean, this is a bit of a spoiler, but that's fine. It's still more impactful when you see it. He's announcing to people who are celebrating with American flags, and he cannot see them. All he hears is he has interspersed that with cries of people. And as he's walking down the aisle, he sees a few people making out on the other side, and he suddenly stops and he feels like he's stepped into a body that has been burnt because of that. So life being made and life being destroyed by the same things they did. It was the most stunning piece of cinema I've ever seen, with sound effects that gave me goosebumps. Like that 10-minute scene, this is what the power of cinema is, and this is what Chris Nolan wanted to see, that even those that worked on it did not know the impact, because they never thought the second bomb would be dropped. They never
But
thought even
that's
the
so
first bomb
true.
would be dropped.
That's so true. And nobody had anticipated it to happen in the first place. In fact,
Yes.
this very famous security analyst on Twitter that many might have seen, I think Valina Chakarova. She's
Hmm.
a Russian origin. Used to, I think Russian.
Hmm.
Yeah, Valina Chakarova. She actually recently tweeted about this, and she said, Oppenheimer is one of the most brilliant movies she's also seen. She was talking about it,
Hmm.
and she said,
Hmm.
it's so ironic, but it also upholds just one of my key beliefs over the years, that ironically, nuclear bombs have made the world a more peaceful place.
Yeah, and then the thing is, I don't want to sound like a complete total jackass, but a lot of people did not understand the film because it has layers within layers within layers. And
Yeah,
the
yeah.
only reason I understood most of the film, like for what I thought it was, because it's a only perspective, was because I actually spent 3 hours reading after the film. I did not get the layers when I saw the film, because it's impossible to get everything because of that much of the research. There are some people who, but you watch it for the cinematic brilliance, and when you come back and you read and you read and you read and you read, that's when you understand, oh, that's why this scene was significant, that's why. And I will definitely watch it again, maybe not in a theater, maybe now I'll wait for it to come on streaming or DVD. But I would highly recommend it. But thank you, for joining. I think I will have to wrap up our podcast. We've gone way over
Definitely.
time, but this was a lot of
One,
fun.
since people are so interested in these things and you are also interested, I would strongly recommend, if you have not seen this, there was an OTT series, one part only, one season only, called The Tokyo Trial, that was
Hmm.
done. Uh,
Hmm.
it starred Irfan Khan
Yes.
playing the role of Justice Radha Binod Pal, the sole judge who had one of the two judges, in fact, who had written a dissent judgment in the Tokyo trials of
Hmm.
World War II criminals of Japan.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And it is
Absolutely.
a fascinating show, and it is a very good introduction to how who is really a victim and who really is a perpetrator gets blurred when somebody tries to make the whole thing about civilization and civilizational justice. So who really
Yes,
is the criminal? That is
and it's
something that
only
even a movie like Oppenheimer is raising right now.
and it's on Netflix, I believe. Only 4 episodes of
Yeah,
40 minutes each. Please,
yeah.
please watch
It's an
it.
amazing thing. And if you get your hands on it, if you are interested, you should read the Dissent Judgment of Justice Radha Binod Pal. He was born in Mymensingh, Bangladesh,
Hmm.
and in today's Bangladesh, brilliant jurist of his times,
Hmm.
brilliant enough to be actually considered to be brought on the crime tribunal.
Correct.
So you can imagine how, and he actually gained a lot of notoriety because of the judgment in the Western world. But to this day, Japan actually venerates him for not calling them a criminal. It's such a
Yeah,
divided.
in the Yasukuni Shrine and the Kyoto Ryozen Gokoku, the Gokoku, I'm sorry, there are monuments specifically dedicated to Radha Vinod Pal. So amazing fellow, amazing jurist. Do read it, and we'll talk a little bit more about this. But that's why
Certainly
I love
someday.
Mind Podcast. Yeah, this is comes. But thank you, Rohit, so much for joining. Trust me, when
My
we started
pleasure.
planning for this podcast, none of this was planned, but that's the beauty. We discuss, we sit, and we all come out more educated, more informed, and guess what, with our knives sharpened to debate even more in the next podcast. But thank you so
Agree.
much
हम
joining. We'll be
basically
back.
भजन मंडली चला रहे हैं हमने. Thank you so much for that.
Yes, bilkul. We'll be back next week with more discussions on this, and as we get into the election mode, maybe we'll increase the frequency of the podcast as well. Till then,
Yes.
it's goodbye from all of us, and we'll be back soon. Thank you.